I'm here tonight to talk about the process of giving a TEDx talk, why you'd want to give one, what it looks like, and what the process looks like. Depending on where you know me from, you'll know me as my maiden name, Laura Pennington, or my married name, Laura Briggs. And I have given one, at the time of this recording, I've given one TEDx talk. I am in the process of getting ready to deliver my second TEDx talk in about 2.5 weeks. And I was actually in the last week or so invited to give another TEDx talk this year. And I actually turned down that opportunity. It was on a different topic altogether, but it wasn't really going to work with all of the other things that are going on at the same time. So, what I wanted to do is cover a couple of things about the TEDx process and really start out with the basics behind the idea of TEDx. The whole concept of TEDx comes out of TED.com and TED Talks. Now, TED conferences are massive. They're usually national or international and only have a select number of speakers delivering those talks. Oftentimes, those TED Talks are curated by the chief team at TED. Now, TED has also given licenses to local TED events, which they call TEDx events. TED events tend to be your huge, big name people. So, multi-best-selling authors, professional speakers, legendary entrepreneurs, major people who are big, big names out there. So TEDx is a great way to practice some public speaking and to begin to get more experience in the field of speaking professionally and adding your name to the TEDx roster. Now, one of the reasons to do a TEDx talk is because they are seen as a major credibility booster. TEDx talks are viewed over 3 million times per day, and that's even an outdated statistic, right? That's from Chris Anderson's book back in 2000, and it's either 2012 or 2015. So it has definitely gone up since then. So TEDx Talks are viewed all the time. I watch them all the time. I subscribe to the TED YouTube channel. So every time there's an update, I'm receiving something about that and being told about a new TED Talk that has been uploaded. So TEDx Talks, that's simply referring to the local events that are licensed under the main name of TED. So why TEDx, right? Like everybody pretty much knows what a TEDx talk is. That is a major reason to do one. The whole concept behind TED is ideas worth spreading. So if you believe that you have an idea worth spreading, then that is your opportunity to get up there on a stage, talk about it. Usually the talks are between like 5 to 18 minutes. More often than not, you're going to find the talks between 10 and 15 minutes, right in that sweet spot. They cannot be any longer than 18 minutes. So the idea is to get across a really great idea. Sometimes, and a lot of times actually, that's woven in with somebody's personal story as well. But it's really your chance to showcase your expertise and insight on something. Now, an important note about what TEDx is not. TEDx is not your opportunity to sell something. In fact, you do not get paid to be a TEDx speaker. I feel that's very important to mention up front, which some people might think, well, why on earth would you do a TEDx talk if you're not being paid? So these are two things that a lot of people have misconceptions about. One, you are not paid to be a TEDx speaker, and two, you cannot sell anything from the stage. You are not there to do a sales pitch. So this is not like those conferences where you might attend where someone's up on stage and then they're selling books or courses or personal coaching at the back of the room. TEDx talks cannot be promotional in that sense. Now, there are great ways to highlight your expertise that might lead people to hire you or to work with you in other ways, but you cannot directly mention it on the stage. So the reason that I decided to do a TEDx talk was because I really felt like it was the next step for my business and my career as a freelance writer and an author. I also knew that it was possibly going to take a long time and was trying to line it up as close as possible with the publication of my book, my first book that's coming out in July 2019. So I actually started an entire year in advance. I learned a lot about the TEDx and TED process by reading books, listening to podcasts from other TEDx speakers. I watched a lot of TEDx talks, and I also partnered with a company that has had just amazing success in placing people with TEDx talks to get some coaching around my idea. And that was one of the smartest things that I ever did, because going into it, my idea was not refined. And one of the coolest things I discovered in the process of now doing 2 TEDx talks is that the idea that you start off with in the process will change significantly, probably 80%. Before you actually deliver it. The main basic premise and concept is still there, but your actual talk will change quite a bit. So even having a semi-refined version when you start to submit applications is important. Okay, so now I want to move into this section of the training about what you need to know about TEDx before you do it. You already know you're not going to get paid. You already know you cannot sell something from the stage. You cannot walk on stage with your book and be like, hi, I'm amazing, right? You can put it in your bio. It's going to be in the program. They might announce it before you talk, or maybe someone will Google your name after they view the TEDx talk. So TEDx events start months, sometimes a solid year in advance. So I started last July submitting my applications to TEDx Talks, and you can visit the TEDx website and narrow down your geographic region. I recommend looking for places that you have some type of personal connection to. Some TEDx events are very specific about this, that they only allow people from that specific area. One of the TEDx events that I had submitted for and then realized I didn't have a connection to was TEDx Ohio State University. So even though I grew up in Ohio, I never attended OSU. I did not have a personal connection to it. So there wasn't really a way for me to appear on that stage because they were looking for local people. Same thing with like TEDx Grand Canyon University. They're looking for Phoenix residents, Phoenix business people, and all of that. So that could be something that could knock a particular group off your list. So another thing that makes it much easier is when you do have some type of personal connection to either that TEDx local event you've attended before in the past, or you live in the area. I was rejected from so many TEDx events. It's not even funny. Learned a lot in the process. Actually thought that none of them were going to come through because what happened was the team I was working with, we were submitting applications at such a high level that I was getting rejections sometimes 3 and 4 times a week. And it was really hard to get that many rejections, but they kept assuring me like, this is normal. Sometimes it takes a lot. I know of somebody else who submitted over 150 applications across multiple years before being accepted. So this is not something that is for the faint of heart. So it can take a long amount of time to get approved as a TEDx speaker, which can be a little bit disheartening if you kind of thought this was going to be simple. I knew I should start well in advance of when my book was coming to publication. I didn't even have a signed contract yet from my publisher when we started the process of submitting for TEDx Talks, but I knew that it was in the works. And I thought it could take anywhere from like 3 to 9 months for any of these opportunities to start coming through. And that was completely accurate. It really did take that long. I was shortlisted several times for different TEDx events, but did not make the cut. And finally in, I believe it was the end of September, maybe mid-September, I heard from my first TEDx event in Pennsylvania that I was shortlisted again, right? So they had narrowed it down to 15 speakers. They were trying to get it down to 6. So it still wasn't guaranteed. So every TEDx event has a different process of how they narrow down their speaker pool. Some of them receive hundreds of applications, and they all have their own approach to narrowing down the speaker pool, to preparing people. Some of them have live in-person auditions as well. So that's something to be aware of. Do your research before you submit to a particular event. They will post their date first so you can figure out if you have availability to do that particular event and kind of maybe soft block that off on your calendar. Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to present somewhere that's like, it's like a blend between thought leadership and your own personal story. Because of everything I'd been told about like no selling from the stage and that this is, you know, you're not being paid, like this is very much about thought leadership. In my original drafts of both of my TED Talks, I did not include a lot of information about me. I really tried to like pull me out of it and try to speak as generally as possible. One of the challenges and downsides with that, however, that I've heard from all the speaker coaches I've worked with is that People want to hear your personal story. They don't want it to be the entire depth of the TED Talk, but they do want it to be something that they can connect with, because people have a hard time connecting with a public speaker if there isn't some reason like that they can buy into your story. So that was something I wasn't expecting, and I had to go back both times and add quite a bit of my personal story to the TED process. And I will dive more into that later as I go into the, what happens if you get chosen as a finalist and a speaker and all of that. All right, so let's go into the speaker selection process. Like I said, I started in last July. I submitted to many, many different places. They all had their own different requirements. They all had their own different requirements, and some of them made you go through multiple phases before you were even considered as a finalist. So the one that I just turned down, the process involved, you had to submit a 3-minute video, like an overview of what you hope to cover in your TEDx talk. Then you had to flesh out a full draft. Other places asked me to make an outline of my talk, and then they would get on the phone and do feedback with you. So each event really does have their own speaker selection process, and you need to read the instructions carefully, because they will tell you exactly what to do and what not to do. If they say 3-minute video, make it a 3-minute video. Do not send in 5, do not send in 6. Remember, some of these places are getting dozens or even hundreds of applications. So you don't want to send in information that does not meet with the guidelines, okay? You want to be on target with all of the different guidelines that they have asked you to follow. Always follow the instructions. Do not make things more difficult. All of the people who work at these TEDx events are volunteers, so please be respectful of their time. Most of them have other jobs, other responsibilities, and they've set up their speaker selection process to be streamlined, to give everyone a fair chance, and you going outside the rules probably just means your talk will get rejected, even if it is awesome. So one question that comes up a lot, do you have to have a personal connection to the local event? Not necessarily, right? Like, I'm speaking at TEDx Georgia Tech. It is perfect as far as like audience for me, because I talk about the freelance economy and like how people graduating from college now and millennials, like we're entering a workforce that's nothing like our parents, and we have to be completely adaptable and approach employment and work differently because of that. So as far as that local audience, it's perfect for me to go there and speak to that audience, because they're my target people, but I do not have a connection to Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech's approach to curating their TEDx event is to bring in awesome speakers from all over, some of whom are from Georgia, some of whom are from other states that are traveling to go there. And their idea is they really want to present like 8 really awesome speakers on a variety of different subjects. And that's something else that's really cool about the speaker selection process. You're not going to have someone else at the event who's talking about something that you do. My first TEDx event, someone was talking about indigenous cultures. Someone was, it was actually a teenager talking about artificial intelligence and all this cool facial recognition software that he had built. There was a marketing guy talking about building a story and connecting with your audience. There was somebody talking about like the motivational tools they use to lose weight. So no 2 TEDx talks at a local event are the same. The speakers do that on purpose. So you're not going to have to worry about, oh my gosh, what if I'm competing against another person? Now, that being said, in doing your research for a TEDx event, it's a great idea to go out and see what other TEDx talks have been done in your general area of expertise. So maybe you're talking about leadership. Maybe you're talking about adaptability. Like, see what other TEDx talks and TED Talks are out there on those topics, so that you can make sure you can say something different. Because if there's a really well-known TEDx talk that a lot of people have watched and you're essentially going to say the same thing, the speakers are all TED Talk fans themselves. They're going to notice it. So again, do your research. Another question that comes up is, do I have to write for the theme of the TEDx event? Okay, so some TEDx events, all of them will usually have some type of a theme, like a 1-word theme or a few words in a phrase theme, but not all of them are going to adhere really rigidly to that. And you can be surprised how the theme can be adapted to your talk pretty broadly. So the theme for the first TEDx event I did was intention with design, right? So like I was talking about how basically the story of how I became a freelancer and why freelancers are taking over the economy in the United States and such a huge portion of the workforce right now. So there were parts of my speech that kind of hit on like living an intentional life with freedom and flexibility built in, but I did not center the whole talk around that. And I don't know that any of the other speakers like really focus like heavily on that theme of intention. Like here, I wrote this speech to coincide with intention in design. The Georgia Tech conference, very easy to mold your material to it. The theme is momentum. So you can see how a lot of TEDx talks of varying natures could be adapted based on a theme, but you do not have to adhere to that local theme. And please don't be boxed in by it when you start to create your TEDx event talk. All right, so let's go into what helps you get chosen as a speaker. Number one, following directions. And sorry to tell you, but every local event has their own directions and they're all different. So make sure you comply with their deadlines, that you're professional in your communication. If you're selected as a finalist, follow the instructions, reply by the time they need you to, be very excited about it, and go above and beyond if you can in delivering. Like if they ask you for material, like say they want 2 paragraphs of an overview of what you talk about, make sure those 2 paragraphs are fine-tuned, okay? That helps you get chosen as a speaker. However, it is all over the map as far as what TEDx local events are looking for. So there is no guarantee that you're going to be accepted, even if you're like, but I live in this area and my topic is perfect for the theme for this local event. That does not necessarily mean you are going to get a spot. I applied to so many TEDx events, got rejected from so many, and then all of a sudden it was like boom, boom, boom. Almost 3 offers came in almost back to back, right? So part of that was just, I always preach this to my freelance students as well. Part of pitching is a numbers game. So part of it is just having enough material out there that you're consistently pitching and looking for these opportunities, and eventually it will happen. But it did take a long time, right? Like my first offer came in mid-September for an event that was originally scheduled for mid-November. And that actually had to get pushed due to weather to January. And then the night that I was delivering my first TEDx talk, I got the email confirming that I was a speaker for the second one. So that was because I'd done a ton of applying to different TEDx events. So definitely important to remember that you will have to get used to hearing no a lot. It's actually funny because the third TEDx talk that I turned down was about rejection. And I'm still going to try to do that talk in some other way, but it was essentially like what I have learned being told no thousands of times, right? Like as a freelancer, as a business owner, trying to get a literary agent, getting a book published, like I've heard no a lot. So I feel like that helped me push through it because I am so used to hearing no or getting no response in my business world that it wasn't something new to me. So I just kept pushing and I knew the right opportunity would open up, and it really did. The first place that I delivered my original TEDx talk, it was such a cool experience. It was in a PBS television studio. There were only 5 other speakers. It was really cool. Only the first 100 people who showed up could sit in the studio. They had the whole production room. Like we were getting mic'd by, the PBS crew. And I also knew because of that my video and audio would be top quality because it was being filmed at a television station. And here's another thing that's important to know about doing a TEDx talk. You might be thinking that you need to go to the place where the audience is most likely to be your people, right? I used the example earlier of speaking at Georgia Tech and those being my people. However, the audience physically there in person when you deliver your TEDx talk is one small fraction of the potential people that you could interact with your material. You are there to create a digital asset that can be shared all over the internet. You are there to interact with people at the event. Of course, you're there to deliver an amazing talk and inspire great conversations and ideas. Sure, and it will happen, right? Like most of these events, afterwards, there's a chance for the audience to come meet you, ask questions. People were giving me business cards, asking me for advice, all kinds of cool stuff. But all of the speakers at the TEDx event that I've already delivered at the time of this recording, we were there for the video, right? We want the video that will be a digital asset that will live on the TED YouTube channel forever. That's where we're going to get views. We're using that, to highlight our speaking experience, to build a speaking component of our business or career. Most of the other speakers that I talked to at the event, that they were there for that purpose of inspiring a great conversation, but building that digital asset. So it is important to show up and do a great job on the actual day for the audience. Of course, like, they've paid to be there. These volunteers have spent a ton of time putting together this event, but it is not the only reason. You really need to put in the effort to make sure that your talk is great and that you're dressed well and you look good and all of these things, because this is an asset that will live on the internet forever. And it can be a great tool for you to use however you wish to use it, right? My publishers were very excited to hear that I had landed one TEDx talk and then a second TEDx talk, because they knew of the credibility behind that. And they knew even they could use my TEDx talk, which was perfectly aligned with my book about freelance writing. I'm talking about the freelance economy. They're like, we can use this as an asset to promote pre-orders of the book. So it is a recognized name, the TED and TEDx brand. So that's another reason to do it, is because you're going to have this awesome asset that opens other speaking doors. Now, since landing my first TEDx talk, I have received 3 other paid speaking engagement opportunities. I also had a client who found my Upwork profile, where I added like TEDx speaker to my Upwork profile tagline like the day after I did the talk. He found my Upwork profile, offered me a fully paid, like, at-home remote job, which I turned down and was like, yeah, I don't do full-time employment for anyone, right? Like, I'm a freelancer, I work with different people, but here's how we could work together. That gentleman has since become my ongoing client and is a really great person to work with. And one of the reasons that he said he even reached out to me was because he saw on my Upwork profile that I was a TEDx speaker and made the joke, I probably can't even afford to hire you because you're a TEDx speaker. So that's just one small sampling of the way that people perceive TED and the TEDx brand and the doors that it can open for you. I am a big believer in leveraging every opportunity you get to open more doors. So I use this example all the time, but it's because it's true. I worked as a project manager for Microsoft, building out their digital freelance team for a project a couple of years ago. As soon as that project was complete, you better believe I put it in every other bid, every other proposal. I brought it up all the time. Name recognition. It opened other doors for me. So doing one TEDx talk, which at the time I'm recording this is not even live yet on the internet yet, because it takes a while for them to process all the videos and for TED to approve them and fact check everything you said. That has already opened tremendous doors for me to be a speaker at 3 different conferences, to be a faculty member at my state's Writers Center. It's been a great tool it will be a great tool for me to use for publicity for my book as well. It's going to immediately go in my email signature. Okay. So that's another thing to realize too, is you're not going to get instant access to the video. It takes anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months for the local TEDx event to get you the final cut video. It does have to be approved by TED at large. The most important time period for your TEDx video is right after it goes up online. So I built a marketing plan way before I even delivered the first TEDx talk about how I would promote it. And I have all those pieces ready in place because I have no idea when that email is going to come that the videos are live on YouTube. The more views and interest that your video has, especially early on after it's been published, the greater the chances are that it will be picked up by TED.com, which is even more exposure and kind of a credibility booster as well. But no matter what happens with your video, it will be on the YouTube channel and it will be findable by your name and all of that. So it becomes a digital asset that you can use. TEDx events are not broadcast live. on the whole because of licensing issues. So that video is crucial. It's very important. It is how you market what you did with your talk. Photographers may or may not be at the local event. You definitely want to snap some selfies yourself, grab some good pictures. If you can pull something from a professional photographer, that is also recommended, because those are great marketing tools to put on your speaker kit, your one sheet for pitching yourself on podcasts, your website, everything, right? That goes everywhere. Do everything you can to promote your TEDx talk. All right, so now let's dive into how do you prepare for the actual talk. The first thing to know about this process is that almost every local TEDx event has a speaker coach. This could be one person and it could be multiple people. Their job is to help make your talk better, and they will. It can be hard. I'm used to revisions and corrections and suggestions, right, from the world of working with freelance writing clients for 7 years. But when somebody comes back and makes commentary on your talk, most of the speaker coaches are really nice, though. They give very thoughtful feedback. And when you can take a step back and say, yeah, you know what, that person's right. That wasn't the right place to put that statement, or that statement doesn't belong at all. One of the coolest things about preparing for a TEDx talk is get opinions from as many people as you can. My husband went through my draft of my upcoming TEDx talk 4 or 5 times, making comments, and they were great comments. He completely crossed out things that, and he was like, wrote in the margin, this is not relevant. And then when I went back and read it again, I was like, yeah, that isn't relevant. Why is that even in there? So practicing it, really, really important. Being open to that feedback. Read it out loud. You will really get a sense of what you're talking about, what you're saying, and all of that good stuff when you practice it out loud. You'll hear things that you're like, did I mean to say that? Is that really what I wanted to get across in that idea? You want to time yourself also to make sure you are in the good time frame. You go through several weeks of coaches giving feedback. The 2 that I've done, we've had about between 8 to 12 weeks from acceptance of the idea to the actual TEDx talk itself, which kind of puts pressure on you if you're not a person who memorizes things well. There was a teleprompter at my first TEDx talk. I used it in rehearsal and totally underestimated my ability to memorize my talk, because I delivered it cold the night of it live. But it was nice to have that teleprompter there. But most TEDx talks are fully memorized, no teleprompter available. So you want to finalize your TEDx material as soon as you possibly can, because you need to start memorizing. I do have some tips for memorizing a TEDx talk. I have done mine both times using note cards just like these. I use different colored note cards for the different parts of my talk. So this upcoming talk has 22 slides or note cards that I need to memorize. You're not only memorizing them for the content, but the order in which they come. So the first time that I memorized my cards, I had written on the back the first sentence of what was at the top of that card, so that it would prompt me, I would have my husband hold it and we would go one card at a time and see how much I could remember. I memorize 2 to 3 cards at a time. I speak them out loud over and over and over. When I did my first TEDx event and got up on stage for the dress rehearsal, they had me going first. The teleprompter was not working, and it was the most messed up version of my speech that I ever did practice anywhere. It was awful. It was half the speech. Everything was in the wrong order. It made no sense. And it really freaked me out a little bit, because I was like, wow, this was awful. If this is what happens later tonight, this talk is going to be a total disaster. I think that was just nerves. And it was really weird standing in a television studio with 5 other people I didn't know and the speaker coach, and getting up on stage and just delivering my entire talk from memory. So that can be something that might throw you off a little bit. The memorization is a difficult aspect if you struggle with memorization. Some TEDx events give you a long time to prepare, months and months and months. I had 2 weeks to memorize my first TEDx talk. I was actually driving to the event when the speaker coach called me and said that the event was canceled because they were going to get a massive amount of snow. So I had another 2 months after that point to rememorize my talk. I thought I would go home and like tweak my talk. I actually didn't. I read it again. I was like, this is good. I'm going to keep it the way it is. But I didn't look at it for about 3 weeks. I just wanted to get a break from it because I'd been cramming so hard. And then I went back to memorizing. And for this second talk that's coming up in 2.5 weeks, I have been working on memorizing it only for the last couple of days. Like, we just got the final talk text memorized. So I just practice a little bit every day with my flashcards. You want to give yourself lots of time to prepare. You want to read it out loud, record yourself out loud. You want to practice where you're going to face with different parts of the audience as you deliver the talk as well. Okay. And then finally, delivering a TEDx talk, how to make the most of it. Have fun, right? Like, it's very hard to keep that in mind when you're doing all of these different aspects of preparing for a talk and worrying about whether or not you can leverage this successfully, and am I going to memorize everything, and do I look stupid on stage, and what if I trip going up the stairs? The truth is, you will kind of like click the night of the talk. And if you've done your preparation work and you've memorized and worked with a speaker coach, you will feel confident. After you finalize your talk text, you will work with the speaker coach, reading it over the phone, over Skype, in person, and you will practice the delivery. That can include things like speeding up, slowing down, emphasizing specific words, where you're going to face, what gestures you're going to make, and all kinds of different feedback that you will get from the speaker coach, which is amazing, because if one of the reasons you're doing a TEDx talk is to become more practiced with your public speaking, the insight that you get from this person who's probably been involved in their TEDx event for years and has some public speaking experience will be really instrumental in helping you to grow your business. It will make you a better public speaker too. So I will do a whole separate video training all about how to promote a TEDx talk once it goes live, because neither one of my talks are live at the time of this recording, and I will have more to say about those specific things. But I think this is a great starting point for anyone who is contemplating doing a TEDx talk and wants to know more about the process of how it works, what to expect, and how to prepare yourself for the whole process from beginning to end. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop them below this video. And thanks so much for watching.